Okay, so today we're going to go over the model in place tools. This is one of the best ways to create kind of custom forms and components and just anything throughout your model that doesn't usually fall into the box of these standard tools in terms of shape and form and that sort of thing. So to get to the model in place tools, you're going to come up here to component, this little drop down menu, and then here is model in place. So if you click on that, it opens up this family category and parameters list. So basically what this is asking you is, what are you creating? Are you creating a door? Are you creating some sort of casework? Are you creating walls, windows, all that sort of stuff? The reason to select the correct category here is important is because in Revit, your line weight styles and your line work, line weights and that sort of thing all fall under these categories. So if I were to make a casework in the walls category, my walls line weight would be used to show that casework, and vice versa. So you need to select the correct category for that, but also because Revit will identify it as this thing. So if I make something in the walls category, then it will allow me to put windows and doors and that sort of thing into it. If I make it a casework, it will not allow me to put windows and doors and that sort of thing in it. So just be kind of cognizant of, depending on what you're wanting to do with this thing later on and how you want it to visually show, what you select here can be important. So I'm just going to select casework for now. It doesn't. All of the tools that you get when you select a category, they're all the same. So it doesn't really matter in terms of showing you how this works. It doesn't really matter what category I select here. So I'm going to check casework and hit OK. And then it's going to ask you, what do you want to name it? So whatever I type in as the name here, when I hover over this thing, just like if I hovered over this wall, it would tell me what type of wall it is. Whatever I name this, when I hover over it, it will display that name. So I'm just going to I'll go with custom forms. Okay, so now I get this different menu up here. So I got insert still, but there's a lot of stuff grayed out. Annotate, everything. Everything is there in terms of what I can use, but I've lost a lot of what was typically under the annotate tab. View, same thing. Manage has most everything still there, and then modify as well. But now, instead of architecture and structure and all that, I get this create tab. So under the create tab, I have what is essentially what you get when you're creating a custom family. So if I were to go up here to new family and create a new family, this is basically how you would begin creating that. So I get my family types and family category and parameters if I wanted to build parameters and stuff like that into this. But I'll get into how the parameters and that sort of stuff work when we do the family creation video. So then you've got your forms. So these are your building blocks. This is what you use to create the 3D pieces of whatever it is that you're making. And then you've got your model line. That's pretty standard from the same model line that you had before. If you want to load a component in, you can do that. And then you can create model groups and openings and that sort of stuff in whatever you've created. So as you can see, when I'm in this editing mode, I can't select anything that is outside of this editing mode. Another thing to keep in mind, that when you're in this editing mode, you will not be prompted to save, nor can you save without getting out of the editing mode and saving. So if you work in this editing mode for hours and hours and hours, and then the program, for whatever reason crashes, you just lost all of those hours and hours of work, unless you've closed out of the model, out of this editing mode, saved, and then gotten back into it. So keep that in mind. You probably don't want to get stuck in this editing mode for too terribly long, otherwise you kind of run the risk of losing out on everything that you've built. So, with that being said, I'll show you a couple of these tools. So extrusion is exactly kind of what the video shows. You draw a form, you draw a line work, and then tell it how thick you want that shape to be, and then it extrudes that up. Blend, you draw two different shapes and tell it the distance between those two shapes, and it'll extrude it up and basically meld between those two forms. Revolve is exactly kind of what it sounds like. You draw an axis and then draw a form on one side, and it will spin it 360 degrees. It'll spin it 90 degrees, 10 degrees, whatever, however much rotation you want it to go. Sweep is basically almost like an extrusion along a non-linear path. So you draw a path for a profile to follow, and then sketch the profile, and then it will extrude it along that path. Swept blend is a combination between sweep and blend. You draw a path, you sketch a profile at one end, you sketch another profile at the other end, and it will follow that path and meld between the two. This is a good way to do kind of like walls that are curved and increasing in height, just like in the preview there. And then you have all of these same tools as voids. So you can create a solid and then start to kind of eat away at it a little bit with some of these other tools here. So with that being said, I'll kind of show you how each one of these works in terms of the steps that you follow to get to where you want. So extrusion, if I click on extrusion, it opens up my creation kind of tab here. So I get my sketch tools. I can draw whatever I want in here. In the extrusion tool, I can have multiple forms. So I can have this piece and I can have this piece over here all by itself. So I can draw kind of however many I want. And then over here, I've got an extrusion end, extrusion start, whether it's visible or not. These are kind of parameters that you can set up. You can apply a material to it, and then apply a subcategory or any sort of identifier that you want there. And then if for whatever reason you clicked on creating a solid extrusion, but you want it to actually be a void, you can flip that here without backing out. So right now, because I'm on the level 1 floor plan, whenever you're in plan, for the most part, unless you have set something different as your work plane, 0 foot 0 is basically that level. So 0 foot 0 for me is at level 1, and then negative would be going into the floor, positive would be coming out of the floor. So let's say I want to make these things 5 foot tall. And then I can go in and apply a material here if I wanted to. So I could come in here and say, I'm going to make this all stainless steel. And then I'm going to hit the check mark. And now you see this all becomes blue. There's a solid form now, and I get these little grips where I can click and drag this if I want to. But if I go to my 3D view, now I have a bunch of these forms. They're all exactly 5 feet tall and extruded up in the shapes that I set. If you want things to go up at different heights, those have to be separate extrusions. They can't be all drawn in the same sketch. Another thing to note, when you're in this editing mode, which one the start and the end is does not matter. So I could make this 0 foot and I could make this 5 foot, and it results in the exact same thing. So that doesn't really make a difference. Now, so that was in plan. If I go to, say, an elevation, and I create an extrusion, I get this window that pops up that I did not get in the plan view. So when you're in plan, it automatically will default to your work plane of the floor plan level. So when I'm in elevation, it's going to ask me, is there a certain work plane that you want to work on? or do you want to pick something? So I'm going to say pick a plane, and when I'm in pick a plane, I can highlight the face of that wall that I've got there and work off of that face. And then at that point I can draw whatever I really want to draw. And then in this case, whatever surface I've selected is 0 foot 0. So at this point it's 5 feet off of that wall there. So that is the extrusion tool in a nutshell. Blend works very similarly. So I come in, I draw a shape, and now I need to set what the top is. I need to go to edit top. I've drawn what the bottom is going to be, and then edit top. Let's say I draw a circle here, and then I've got my basically start and finish. I'll say 4 feet. I can apply a material if I want. I hit my check mark, and now it melds between the two of those, and this will be 4 feet tall. I can grab this grip and drag it up taller if I want, or I can just come in here and type different heights, and it will automatically meld that. So that is basically blend. It's just an extrusion with two different shapes on either end of the extrusion. Next is revolve. So if I go to revolve, I have to draw where my axis is. So I need to come in here first and draw, say, okay, this is where I want the center of this revolution to take place. I'll come in, draw whatever shape I really want, and then keep in mind that you do need to close the shape off. So I need to move along this whole axis and close this off. It doesn't have to be on the axis, so I could take this whole form and move it out a little bit, and then click my check mark, and it makes the revolve, and then it leaves a hole through the middle of it. But in revolves, I'm allowed to create two separate forms there, so I could create multiple revolves spinning around the same axis and come in here and say, okay, I don't want it to go all the way around. I want it to, basically go 3/4 of the way or halfway, or however far you want this thing to spin. You can set that up. One thing that I forgot to mention, so that's basically revolve, but in the blend tool, remember how in extrusion I was able to set up like a couple different shapes and do that all at once? In the blend tool, you are not allowed to have multiple shapes. You're only allowed to have a single shape that you're working with here. So keep that in mind. You're not allowed to just go through and create a whole bunch of blends at the exact same time. You have to do them individually and separately. So that's revolve. And then sweep, you get these two options. You get sketch path and you get pick path. I'll show you the difference between the two. So sketch path is when you've got something that's just moving along one plane. So if I'm working on this floor plan and I have let's say I've got a profile that I want to follow this path right here. So I'll draw my path, I click my check mark, then this option comes up over here. I can either select a profile, so they have profiles already in here, so I could load one in, and if you come down here to profiles, there's a whole bunch of different stuff in terms of profiles that you can choose from, or I can hit edit profile, and it's going to take you to whatever views are basically best in terms of drawing on this profile. So this little red dot and this line that's running through here, if I'm in the sketch path tool, this is where I'm going to be sketching my profile. So right now I'm on a kind of weird axis, and I don't have a good view looking directly at that. So none of my elevation views are looking directly at this angle. So I can click and drag this along my path and get this set up so that I do have a direct view in line with that. So now, if I click on this and hit Edit Profile, now I've got these two options, which I'll select the east elevation, and now this is my little the little line with the red dot. This is telling me this is the location of my path, and I can draw whatever form I really want for that that piece. Or maybe I don't want it to be just like that. I'll go something like this. Okay, so I draw whatever profile I want. I can select the material again over here, click the check mark, click the check mark again to get out of to complete it, and now I have kind of a snaking feel of this profile. So that is basically sketch path on a single plane. If we create a sweep here and do pick a path, I can select the edges of things. So I'm going to select the edge there, select the edge here, and now this is where it differs from pick a path versus sketch a path. In sketch a path, I would only be able to draw here, here, and then maybe down, or anything on this little surface here, because that's a single plane that I'm drawing in. In pick a path, I can now come out of the plane here, and maybe I go over and down, and then I can trim these so that I get the path to be one continuous line. So in this instance, I can kind of move all of those around. I've got my profile work plane here. I can hit Edit Profile, and let's just draw a little circle here. So then when I hit the check mark again, now it will bend that profile around along a three-dimensional path rather than a two-dimensional path. So that is the difference between pick a path and sketch a path. And now swept blends. Swept blends will only allow you to draw a single line. So whether it be an arc, whether it be a single line, you can only draw one. So I can't draw that and then draw another segment. It will not allow me to do that. I have to keep it so that the swept blend is on, these profiles are on either end of a single line. However, that being said, you do have the option of a spline. So with a spline, I can kind of click around and make that amorphous shape that I might be after, and a spline is considered one line all the way throughout the entire thing. So in this instance, I can finish my path. I'll say select profile 1. I can choose a profile again if I want to, or I can go to Edit Profile, and I can draw my profile there, select profile 2, edit the profile there. Maybe I'll go with a great big rectangle on this end, hit the check mark a couple times, and then it follows that path and melds between a circle and the rectangle. Excuse me. Something to keep in mind with swept blends, you do not have to change the profile on either end. There's nothing that says that you have to do that. So if you have something like, maybe I want this circle to follow this path, but I want it to start here and I want to end somewhere up here, I could make that exact same circle up here and just have it naturally rise at the exact same rate all the way up the entire path until it gets to the end. So little things like that are nice ways of using these tools to kind of get the form you want. It does not necessarily have to be a different form on either end. So that is extrusion, blend, revolve, sweep, swept blend. That's pretty much all of them. And real quick, I will show you. Let's create a great big block here. Okay, so I've got this big block, and then the voids. Let's say I'll do a void extrusion. It's kind of the easiest way to show you how these work. So I've got my tools that are the exact same as the solids, essentially, and I've set my work plane to be the face of this, and then I'm going to say 0 foot 0, so this is 0 foot 0 is the face of that because I set that as my work plane. And now in voids, the positive direction is into the page, negative is out of the page. So let's say I want to go in 5 foot. So I'll hit the check mark, and now when I select off of that, it has voided out that form back into the shape. Occasionally, you might have something that results in something like this. If you have this yellow line in your model in place family for a void, it just means it's not cutting anything. You've created a void, but it's not doing anything for you. If that's the case, you can come up here to cut geometry, select the void, and then select whatever solid piece you want it to cut, and then it should work. So that is basically all of your model in place tools, and those are you would be surprised at how many things you can actually create using these. You just got to be a little creative with how you use these tools, but for the most part you can build just about anything with these 5 tools here. So that is model in place.